Yotere, yotere, ayo, yotere. Yotere, yotere, ayo, yotere. Yotere, yotere, ayo, yotere. What's up? What's up? What's up, my friends? Kalinata. Happy full moon. And we have a lot more homies now in the a little ethosphere circle. A lot more strange birds in the flock. So welcome. Also, thank you for your time and your presence. And I hope that this full moon reading serves you well and finds you in perfect time. With that being said, and all welcomes and friendship and otherwise, because we are here to change minds, it is a full moon. A happy, wonderful, I mean, it's not happy. It's not wonderful. It is. I'm being extra. But it's a full moon in Cancer. With Jupiter in a proper conjunction. Very literally, so all upon. And in graphing, it very much feels like the moon is hidden. Tucked behind Jupiter or perhaps under its wing, which maybe is the ways in which we're also expressing new ideas, not necessarily just because of Jupiter, but Jupiter being this sort of bigger picture, and so much of the energy in Aquarius, I think, is very much us as a collective being open to new ideas, being open to new information, being open to new discoveries, and day by day, my 13 moons in the future and impending reading, I did talk about how I think consciousness will be able to expand very much this year in our understanding, but in also so many other ways. But in our understanding of it, and so much of science is coming to understand different things about Jupiter and different things about what we understand as mind or identity or consciousness on a cellular level, on a microscopic atomic level, and what we understand as levels of consciousness and where we're really finding that still point in ourselves. Which is wonderful, because that's exactly why I designed source code breath. Uranus in the last remainder of Taurus will be moving into Gemini, which, right on par with our expanded understandings, I think will ask of us to understand what exactly choice means. What exactly choice and its impact means and equates, and what exactly our responsibility to choice means in our lives and in the world. Gemini loves to be this or that, and on either side of the fence or what have you. But I think that there's very much a nuance to be understood in how it is we digest or understand polarity, how it is we view polarity even, and ultimately, I think viewing polarity more as a threshold or a gateway to non-duality. If you can identify either point, then you're that much more able to identify a middle ground. So once you identify polarities, that is not the last step, that is merely the beginning. And so I want that to be very much on our minds as we cope, as we uh, extend understanding to ourselves and to the world outside of us. And as we allow ourselves possibility and option in any given situation, especially if you feel backed into a corner, or between a rock and a hard place, or at a fork in the road. Any crossroads is also a liminal space, and more than just an intersection or this or that, or an opportunity to go right or left, but perhaps an opportunity to exist in the liminal and in between, but also to make your own choice and to make your own path and to perhaps pave something altogether new, or create those tracks to be followed. In antipode or opposition to this would be Capricorn, though empty of planet. I think lends itself to not just our understanding of grounding or stability, but the capacity to stabilize, and not just for the sake of stabilizing, as in staying put, but so as to better aim, so as to have more steady aim in whatever direction it is we intend to move forward. And again, in a sort of antipode to Gemini, that aim is strengthened by the tension between 2 points, but is not designated toward either of these 2 points. Very literally, like on a bow, these 2 points of tension is our polarity, and the non-duality is the dimension and speed and rate at which the arrow actually flows. Aquarius, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Mars, Pluto, and that whole relationship has been quite interesting. Please check out any previous readings, because that has been intense, and will continue to be so. But the relationships are maybe slightly different in the ways that they're moving. Mars and Pluto very much in more of a relationship than just Venus, Mars, Mercury, and Venus and Mercury very much closer in communication. So they, were once all in a circle, in a line or whatever, playing telephone, and now they've kind of broken off into their independent Zoom rooms or whatever. What I got from that was like ideas of outsider, or feeling like an outsider, or being outside of situation, feeling outside of the circle, feeling odd, weird. However, that ties directly back to choice, because the idea of weird isn't a bad thing. By definition, I believe it's like your ability to play with fate. However, I've known that, but I remembered it as your ability to play with time. And that's maybe because I invest less into the idea of like predetermined fate or destiny, because I think so much of that idea is ingrained in entitlement and ingrained in colonialism because of that entitlement. So rather than fate, rather than destiny, our capacity to navigate time or exist in time, our proprioception in time, our kinesthetic space in time, our presence in time, and the impact of our choices in time, which isn't obsessed with the past or obsessed with the future, which is very much, again, that Capricorn and that Sagittarius energy, that antipode energy of stability and choice and direction and focus and choice, so as to generate momentum rather than to forcefully move through, which is a reoccurring theme, as will be all year, especially because of the thematic of the horse energy. And so being weird is quite a good thing, because you are able to understand and navigate with great awareness your space and place and impact in time. So embrace it and allow it to be a regenerative source of energy and thought rather than something that makes you feel outside of, because I don't know, everything's crazy. It's fine to be outside of, honestly. So the relationships of these planets now, I think, serves very much more like pillars of thought. Like, you know, in the High Priestess card, there's these two pillars that they exist around, and that's, you know, a general occult thematic that exists in so many forms, even within the body. You know, there's, yes, sort of a left and a right pillar, but there is a central tide of energy. So these are pillars of thought, but creating or illuminating a threshold or a doorway. And again, the ability to cross that threshold is operating beyond the polarity and taking action with integrity in a different axiom, a different axis in space, in a different dimension. Geometrically, I think that's exactly what occurs in us when we root and we, you know, walk the tree of death, and we, you know, do shadow work, but we're also able to open the third eye and, you know, grow spiritually and expand in awareness. Both are necessary in order to grow. Everybody loves to focus on the tree of life and its beautiful lushness, but that is only possible because of its root structure. So we have to pay mind to that. The tree of life does not exist without the tree of death. I say this often, but to work just the tree of life is like operating on 1/8 of the perspective. And all of this in Aquarius. So, you know, new ideas, new modes of navigation, new identities or possibilities, ingenuity, intuitiveness, you know, maybe ideas that occur in dreams, ideas that are more easily reached in meditation. There's so many modalities of like channeling that are more uplifted or more available or accessible now. And I think that's because we're beginning to, or we're on the cusp of, more scientific information to understand what exactly is collective consciousness, or where the mind goes when we receive that kind of information. Much like we wonder where things go when they're in the cloud. I don't want to get too deep into this today, but Neptune moving into Aries, not quite yet on the fence, but Neptune moving into Aries with Ceres, Chiron, and Eris, is profound. I mean, obviously it's a you know, longer rotation, but it's all of these elements within the same. And you know, Aries and Chiron has been rocking its own thing for a hot minute. There is a reading of Chiron and its effects with all signs, so please check that out if Chiron's been kicking your butt. But also if you're ready to kick some butt, because Ceres and Eris didn't come around to just fucking play. I mean, we're playing for sure, but we also are playing for big dreams. And the stakes are high. And I don't think that means, you know, like, we're playing to win and, you know, da-da-da-da-da. I think we're going to have to operate beyond that. We're playing to grow. We're playing to change. We're playing to experience. We're playing to expand. And I think revolution will come with the release of idea of loser. Granted, I know that's probably not what everybody wants to hear, because everybody's angry and we want winners and we want losers, but again, that's like this idea of the outsider, and we want to be able to transmute that energy rather than just to dismiss it, expel it. or brush it under the rug. And so this Neptune and Aries energy with all of this assistance, I think is very much like, again, extreme polarities, but haunted memories. And, and that's very much like Chiron too, but like haunted memories and wounds. But also the ways in which that can be Holy Ghost goals, like in the Buddhist idea of hungry ghosts. Are we starving them, or are they well fed? Either way, they're obsessed. Either way, they're attached, and that's not what we want. What we do want, again, is transmutation of that energy. And so rather than starving them out or feeding them in gluttony, these starving ghosts of ours, these shadows of ours, these wounds and pains and painful mentalities of ours, I think the transmutation comes with offering and understanding offering, and the ways in which that attributes more so to sainted story. So outside of the idea of starving a hungry ghost or gluttonous hungry ghost, both of those are some sort of punishment rather than offering. Whereas, if we leave libation, or if we leave, fruit or, bread on an altar in offering, then we offer positive energy, we expect nothing in return, and for the energy, for the eminence, for the idea of this, sainted story, or this, like expansive perception and expansive understanding of self. It's very much moments where our hearts break open and we're able to receive when we're willing to be open about it. I think even people that are very reserved can be very open and unabashed in prayer and ritual and offering. And sometimes the most soft-spoken people really, really let their power out in those settings. So consider the ways in which, and the relationship that you have to that withholding or that offering, and the impact of it, and perhaps the choices around it as well. But there will be more on that, I'm sure. So, in light of this moon, may we pull some cards and perhaps get some insights from the moon herself. And for all my new homies, a lot of which were probably from TikTok, but also maybe Instagram. So some of you may know, some of you may not fully know. Some things you might notice that are different by the way that I read is, yes, I do read traditional tarot, but I also read in cartomancy and playing cards. So it may look a little different, but it does give us some, very literal and, body-oriented and time-oriented and, step-oriented, kind of tangible information. And its relationship to tarot very much helps us expand in that spiritual energy and that mind energy in a way that we can sort of track and identify rather than feel lost or overwhelmed by. Sometimes with collective readings I feel like there's a lot of energy, so the more I guess definitive or precise we can get, all the better. So perhaps that is new for you, perhaps that is cool, perhaps that is interesting, perhaps you have not seen it before, so welcome. The other thing that you might notice that is slightly different is that I also use it as an opportunity to breathe. I think your breath is very much a vehicle to yourself, to anywhere, to deeper places, to different dimensions, to healing, to truth, to certainty. to truth. And so I take it as an opportunity to breathe, and we can also use numbers to sort of identify uh, elemental energy and where in the body it lies so that we can get some breath exercises from it as well, or some idea of how it is that we're breathing. So, if you would like to, it is an invitation for you to breathe with me. While it can be great practice for channeling, if that's your thing, it is not necessarily necessary, and utmost, all I ask is if you decide to breathe with me, which I would really appreciate, then just make your body open to the fullest breath that you can find, perhaps the first one of today, perhaps the least stressful one of today, and to open your awareness to any sensations that might arise, because you never know on this ether web. All right, my friend. Much like we are hanging out, much like there are cards in between us on this to and fro channel of energy in the ether. We'll take 3 deep breaths together, and like I said, open to a full breath and open awareness to any sensation. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Interesting. Interesting. I feel like there's a lot of like lunging into decisions, and I think that comes from a lot of fear and a lot of lack of safety. I also think there's an overwhelming, need for, or maybe not a conscious need, but an overwhelming subconscious need for that safety that is often defaulted as religion, or some sort of dogma. And the ways in which I think people are coming to realize that like they need something more, but don't know if this is it. But also, there's a lot of offerings and everybody's jumping on something. So, there's yet another wave of like cult mentality kind of peddling out its nonsense. And I think in general, collectively, that fear and that safety makes us very impressionable, and makes us very much targets for those kinds of situations. So consider that perhaps there is a worlds of difference between religion and spirituality. And so if you find your spirit longing for understanding, maybe this isn't the place to look for it, because this isn't the place that facilitates that understanding. And that longingness has to be addressed by the thing itself, by spirituality, by investigating it, rather than being told what it is. Which again, choice. That Uranus moving in Gemini and Aquarius and new ideas. And again, Capricorn energy and stabilization. How stable are we before we pull the trigger or make the choice or lunge into something or decide to trust somebody or what have you, and what are those reasons. Um, Ultimately, I don't think you have to decide to trust anybody. If you trust yourself, then you'll know. Um, that is not to sound cynical. That is to say, your decisions do not hinder on whether or not somebody else is trustworthy. Your decisions can hinder, hinge on, can be held up by how deeply you trust yourself. And that will make any and every decision that much easier. So, huh. Okay. Seven of clubs, bottom of the deck. Interesting. It's very much, wands energy, very much fire energy. It's very much a lot of swirling ideas. I think it's very much entertaining possibility for sure, but not just possibility because of it being what you want. I think with sevens, we're often entertaining other people's perspectives rather than tapping deeper into our own. Like, I feel like this is akin to choosing to trust society or trust groups of people more than you choose to trust yourself, your consciousness, your intuition, your ancestors, your spiritual council, your whatever you call it, spirit team. People have all kinds of different names for it. But ultimately, even in that, spirit team, spirit council, there are different aspects of your brain responsible for different, necessitated versions of the ways that you think. And in that is also kind of your spiritual counsel in a lot of ways. The brain, the part of your brain that is more analytical and the part of your brain that is more creative are two versions of, it's the ancestor that was a leader and an ancestor that was a weaver kind of thing. So expand on that however you need to and however it is that you digest that in your own life. But so with that, the seven is a beautiful number, but again, I think where the overwhelm or the anxiety comes from listening too much to people that we don't need to be listening to, like people that we don't even like really see eye to eye with. Like, it doesn't matter what they think, especially if you're communion with your ancestors or your meditations are telling you something on entirely different. It is better to lean into what is going to be best for you versus what society thinks is going to be best for you, or what that circle of friends, that brunch group or whatever is going to agree with or entertain, because it is a strange time in Aquarius and a lot of us have big ideas, and not everybody has the capacity to meet those charges quite yet. Swirling thought. Six of clubs is very much interoception, very much internal thought, much like I was talking about, that building of the root as well as the building of the lush. Too many of us are invested in the lush when we need to be invested in the root. And so the six of clubs is very much pointing to the fact that your north is also internal, and also that if you feel a void, because it's inverted, so if you feel a void, if you feel a hole in your heart or what have you, it's less about finding something to fill that hole, kind of again, Neptune, Aries, hungry ghosts, and starving or well-fed, or starving or gluttonous, rather than having to fill that hole or seeking something to fill that hole, fill that void, or, high seek or what have you. It is very much a reminder that you are your own chalice, you are your own ace of cups, you are your own pyramid and energy circuit, and you are your own, like, not pedestal, but like altar. Very much, you are your own altar. In a very real way, I'm also kind of seeing it as like when you have like an altar case, but there's nothing in it, or there's like the pedestal, but the statuary is missing, um, or the crystals, the cauldron, whatever it is, whatever the focal point of the altar is missing, and it's not because it's gone, it's not because it's a void, it's because there's a miscommunication of perception. It is not that we are broken. It is not that we are missing a piece of our heart. It is that something is obfuscating our view from being able to see ourselves as whole. In so many ways, shapes, and forms, that is colonization and patriarchy, that is industrialization and corporatization, but also, in a very micro, less macro perspective, that is the ways in which, like, you are not less than because you don't have a partner, like, you are not less than because you don't have a kid, whatever these tangible things are, isn't what fills that space. It's our relationship to them that fills that space. So rather than feel like you're empty handed or empty hearted, understand your relationship to it is where that begins to thrive. A relationship or the spirit of the thing, the spirit of that gift, the spirit of that altar, the spirit of that temple within you, is very much the power point, the like pivotal point, the peak of it. So I know it's probably a lot to hear because so much of this world and advertising and apps like this operate and capitalize on us needing more, us needing to fix ourselves, us wanting to be better, better, better. And for sure, all about self betterment, but that doesn't come from hating yourself. Like, that's not a good starting point. That's not a good jump off. And again, back to despite there being no planets, Capricorn and Sagittarius, and their role as an oppositionary, is very much a reminder to start from a solid point, to start from grounding, to start from strength and integrity. Even if you're feeling weak and vulnerable, acknowledging that and being truthful about that is in fact a strength and a stability in its own right. It very much places you in your body and in space and time. And that is very much the key point of grounding. It's not just touching grass, it's not just sitting still. It is very much how you fill your body with spirit. And ultimately, that is key to filling any offerings with spirit. And so when we feel like we're in lack and like we lack spirit and like we are this like, I don't know, empty shell, or we spend too much time, letting go of our energy or expelling our energy sort of mindlessly, then yes, our offerings can feel very light and very short and very equally reflectively empty. And so it is not an issue of more. It is not an issue of more of the thing or more of a course or more of this or more of that. It is about your level of integrity and relationship to it. Treat your heart, especially the wounds in it, like you would a lover, and not through obsession, but through genuine concern and compassion, and your responsibility to show up, just like you would show up for a homie if they needed you. But often, we show up for everyone else before we show up for ourselves. For some reason or another, whether it's because we don't feel worthy, or whether it's because we don't feel like we can be seen in that position or what have you. There's very much a value scale that exists there, and we have to level that out because you are not greater than or less than. You are alive and present and have a great magnitude of emotions and of feelings. And yes, I'm glad that's resonating with y'all. Um, Following Six of Clubs, Ace of Clubs, and a Queen of Hearts, which is very much exactly what I've been saying. Mastery of the fire, mastery of the mind fire, understanding where it comes from, and the ways in which it passes through, the ways in which it passes memories, passes information, the ways in which it flows in between. And when our mind is on fire, like the Seven of Clubs, it's because we're operating back and forth, whether that be, anxiety and depression, whether that be past and future, whether that be, left or right, whether that be good or bad, whatever it is that we're just constantly bouncing between polarities, like anxious and overwhelm and lack of focus, lack of presence, lack of embodiment, really. The ways in which we're so outside of ourselves because there's just cycling energy, rather than being the eye of our storm. The Ace of Clubs wants you to recognize that the mind on fire, isn't something that you can just suppress or treat the symptoms away. It is something that you have to understand the root of. And again, we have that tree of life, tree of death. It is something that you have to understand the root in. A thought or a sensation or a memory, or a thought or a memory comes from, a sensation or an idea or an association from it. This is something that I've illustrated as your reticular activating circuits in the brain, but also in a metaphysical way on the 13 moon calendar, the Alseer Codex. But in understanding the root cause of it, like, it's not that you are, genuinely think that you're unworthy. It's not that you genuinely think that you're not good at this or that this isn't possible. It's that somebody told you that along the way, or somebody made fun of you for it, or somebody looked at you crazy for it, and it created this resistance. It created this fear. It created this shame. It created this guilt in some way, shape, or form. And that is the root cause of then this overthinking, of then this, fear of judgment, perception, lack of understanding, feeling misunderstood, etc., etc., etc. And so when we're able to identify those things and then dig a little deeper and see where exactly it roots from, quite honestly, it changes everything about the body. Because even in, just breath work, it's not that superficial. It's something that, like, the breath moves through the whole body. It passes through all of the cells. So we can't operate, or we can't intend to operate on a superficial level and intend to treat deeper wounds. Ultimately, I think we have to understand that, like, okay, there's a superficial quality in the ways in which we're navigating, understanding, overwhelm, what have you. We peel back that layer. What's underneath that? The system's understanding, or your relationship to the system, or, the systems that you grew up in one way, shape, or form. Okay, what's underneath that? And your more so than your, external relationship, the ways in which you feel about it, the ways in which you've suppressed feeling about it or have an intense feeling about it, and, how you've operated with that, and, whether or not you deem that good or bad, or, appreciate that part of yourself or hate that part of yourself, and what's beneath that layer. Oh, it's, it's something more metaphysical, something more cellular, something more deeply rooted than just your superficial, surface level mind fractures. It's like thin ice. Thin ice is in the mind, and when we crack that surface, even in ice, you crack that surface and water kind of pours out. We're afraid to crack that surface, and we, like to pretend that it's just thick ice up there, and our anxiety is so thick and what have you. But it's because it's been building, and it's, been so deeply rooted that now the ice is visible. Now this symptom is visible. So we crack the ice, we excavate, and we allow the water to pour out. And Queen of Hearts, we understand that water. We investigate that water. We ask that water what's up and what's going on, because that water is also memory. That water is also hydrogen bonds. So again, to go back to polarity, if you've done my source code breath meditations, we talk about polarity, but we also talk about the deeper metaphysical implications of that. And it is not polarity for polarity's sake. It is neither positive or negative. It is the ion channels in between. And that is how, very literally, neurosynapses are formed, and the way neurons communicate, or the way cells communicate in general. So consider that. And maybe go easier on yourself and stop blaming yourself for the symptoms and the superficiality of things, and why treating the symptoms isn't working, and create safe environment so that you feel like you can peel those layers back, take off that band-aid, and see whether or not these wounds are fermenting or have been healing, or have been continuing to bleed under wraps and without our attention, because we've been suppressing the symptoms as best as we can, and with an entire lack of treating the root cause. Interestingly enough, there are many layers to us, like Shrek says, an onion. But that wasn't the first time that idea came out. In fact, there's a very reliable modality in the Vedas to understand that, which is why I designed Decolonize Your Mind, because I associate the Pancha Kosha and the Pancha Klesha and the Pentagram with the medicine wheel, because they operate within the same functions. Also with the tree of life and the tree of death, and incorporating both, in fact, because the medicine wheel is able to, it's a two-dimensional map, but it expands in multiple dimensions, much like the kosha is, yes, a two-dimensional drawing, but it's to illustrate the multiple layers of dimensionality in the psyche, in the body, and in the spirit, so as to peel back layers and get back to root cause, root source. What is actually you? What is actually you? Before colonization, before patriarchy, before our parents fucked us up, before somebody broke our hearts, before somebody told us that we couldn't, before somebody rejected us, whatever it is, all of it. Who you are before all of that is so pure and so loving and so creative and so inspiring and such a sparky little motherfucker. It's like, it's very literally also very akin to your inner child in that way. Before colonial adulthood calcified us, we were a lot less concerned with what people thought or how they perceived how we moved, because we moved from our soul, we moved from our heart, we moved from creativity, we moved from inspiration, we moved from our willingness to be a part of the story, to be interactive with this story of life, and to create a story in life, and in fantasy, but also in plausibility and in play, and so allow yourself to remember what that spark was like. And I promise you, much like with the Six of Clubs, it's not that it's not there. Again, on the altar, it's not that there's no candle on the altar. It's not that somebody snuffed out the flame, although for sure, I get it. People have tried to snuff my flame. Too much. Biologically, so. But it is not something somebody can take from you if you fully believe that it's there. Like Peter Pan. Do you believe in fairies? Like the fairy is that little light in you. And when you doubt it, that, I mean, the fairy, the fairy dies in the movie, but it appears less visible to you. But something as simple as deciding and choosing to believe in that version of you again, to reignite that version in you, is how fairies come back to life in the movie. Is how that spark uh, finds its eminence again, and is able to thrive and be present and be visible to us again. It's very much a perspective shift and a choice to believe in the self and a choice to believe in capacity to heal. Um, Philosophically, it's been argued for ages, whether or not humans are inherently good or inherently evil. But again, that may be colonization, because before colonizers came, we didn't understand sin as this ill in us, this poison in us. We understood ourselves as love, as part of the earth, and as in relationship with that, as in reflection with that. And even now, the ways in which we understand, I think even ancestry, it's so much more about confinement and identity in such a literal or superficial way, when in reality, even our ancestors understood themselves as familiar and as a part of the earth, more so than just this definitive different supremacy weirdness perspective. It's weird, it's not a great word for that, but obfuscation in general. Da, 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 da. Yeah, step out of dogma, step back into spirit. Spirit is very alive and thriving. Dogma is dying, or it needs to. And the corporatization of healing has never been about our health. So, time to tend some wounds rather than dependency on suppression. We pull a spirit card and we bridge. Well, hello, my friends. I'm really glad to see that some friends are here, hanging and present. I hope this finds you well and answers any questions that may be on your mind as the moon begins to rise. I feel that, but we're gonna see if you pop back up. All right. Double down again. Much like we are hanging out, much like there's cards in between us on this two-way street of information exchange. We'll take 3 deep breaths together. And all I ask, should you join me, is that you make your body space available to a full breath, and that you open your mind to any sensations that might arise. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Interesting. I do think there's still a great sense of people trying to apply logic and rationale to emotional needs. And it's not that, like, you have no say here, but it is that we're too dependent on essentially software in our brain that's like not computing abstraction. Essentially, we're looking for concrete when we're dealing with the abstract, and that's also leading us to run in circles, because it's like trying to download a Mac product on a Windows server. It's just like what the fuck are you talking about? This is a totally different language. They can communicate, they can collaborate, they can corroborate information, but it requires you to expand awareness. It requires you to allow for that connection to be made, which, there's various patents for meditations with HemiSync, 100% very useful, very helpful. I think HemiSync is fantastic, and helps to facilitate that. But it is also something that you can do, physiologically, in, coordination training. Dancing is one very easy way of playing with that. There's, various simple calisthenics exercises where you're playing with different limbs and what have you. Actually, that's one of my favorite things about certain disco moves, is it requires that intersection of axes to occur. So again, I say dance, so that we're able to take in different perspectives, but also get a more localized picture of emotion, abstraction, of cause, concern, and impact, or like causality, because it still exists in this fricative state. And I have talked a bit about this on the medicine wheel as well, where it's essentially operating east and west, which is, even more of a limited dimension than just two, really. When in reality that wind doesn't just move east and west current, it, travels and rounds out. I mean, even if you look at like Earth maps, or the ways in which meteorologists track this kind of stuff, it moves in waves, and it moves in sort of like in these oscillating waves, and these, arcs and peaks, not just direct back and forth, not just looking left and right, not just limiting ourselves to those options. It's exploring dimensionality and option. Allow yourself to unfurl, and allow yourself to connect to yourself, so that you can better connect to others, and to others, for sure, other people, other consciousnesses, but also the consciousness that occurs in other things, and in just your setting in nature, in the environment, in the ways in which your vibration and your aura thrives and comes alive, so that it's able to interact with things in a way that's beneficial to all things, and in a way that doesn't exacerbate injury or wounds. Ah. Oh my. Interesting. The Wheel of Fortune is the bottom of the deck, which is interesting. It's also inverted. So, though I think we're trying to push our way through, though I think we're, very much focused on orienting ourselves in the future and where we want to be, this inversion is a moment of stillness, a moment of repose. It's not necessarily stepping back. It is very much, though, the ways in which even stopping to take a breath sort of allows the body to soften and receive. And it's not that you're stepping away, it's not that you're stepping back, it's not that you're, ignoring responsibility. It is that you are able to slow the mind and, take in more of the surroundings. This has come up quite a bit, actually. And so I feel like the best way that I can explain this in movement is there was a time when I was in the Muggle world, when I managed a bar, and we were opening a bar, and it was a night where we knew a lot of people were going to drink this thing, and we didn't have any upstairs, so we had to get it from reserves, from where we keep booze. And somehow the door had been locked, and there was no key in the building for it. So everybody panicked. A bunch of people, did their best to have their action movie moment and try and get the door open. And I grabbed 2 paper clips and was like, I'm pretty sure I can do this. I've seen it, I've done it, it'll be fine. And tried to pick this lock. And there was a point where I was like running down on time, and I was like, fuck, I gotta do this. And I was getting very frustrated. And rather than get, frustrated and follow that momentum, and I don't know, fucking headbutt the door, because that wasn't gonna work. And rather than walk away entirely, because I couldn't really, I just had to sit. I just had to, go from here to all right, let me sit, let me take a breath. And I took a few breaths, and I meditated on what it would be like to open the door and what it would look like. And you would see light, or the space underneath the door. There's no light on yet, but the space underneath the door. And I was sort of imagining if light was coming through, and what it would feel like when all of that light came through as the door opened. And I slowed my heart rate. I dealt with the anger because it was still there and I was still frustrated, but now I've got a better hold on it. And then I went back to the door and I pick, and sure as shit, it was like click, 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 boom, open. And 100%, if I had not just taken those breaths, I probably would have stressed myself right down to the very last second and, tried to force through a situation that forcefulness wasn't going to help. So it wasn't walking away, it wasn't stepping back, but it was very much just trying to wrap your mind around it, trying to get a better perspective of it, trying to get a better perspective of where I'm at in it and where my emotions are in it, so that I could better meet this situation, so that I could better arrive to the situation. And so I want that to be what's on your mind for this Wheel of Fortune inverted. It's not stagnancy, it's not, stillness to a fault, it's not running from responsibility. For sure, that may be part of what we're dealing with. I do think there's a lot of people that are afraid of responsibility. However, when we meet that fear, do we run or do we feed that fear? Again, back to Neptune and Aries and haunted ghosts or sainted story. Do we feed that fear? Do we give into that fear? Do we run from that fear? Or do we hold space so that the fear can safely be dealt with, so that the fear can safely be comforted. It's also why she exists. If you've heard that story. Two of Cups, the Tower, and the Empress. Interesting, because the pillars thing, I was honestly half expecting the High Priestess to come up, but of course it's the Empress, because we're not quite there yet. Again, we're just even getting the, mirage of the threshold in the desert, and so the Empress is very much the birthing process of High Priestess energy. It's very much the birthing process that we're all going through, and in general, that's just scary as heck. Scary, scary, scary. For sure. Like, mad respect to anybody that's gone through that, let alone in the many ways you can, because at home is scary and then a hospital is scary. But also there's a level of unsureness about, who we're going to be and who we're trying to be and whether or not it's going to work out or what have you. But we can't give in to that worry. Much like when there's a child in utero. I think that's the right terminology. They are in this watery sac, and so they can feel all the vibrations around them, and the stress of the parent also feeds stress to the baby's system. So consider if you were having to nurture yourself in a cocoon, in a little watery cocoon, how would you transmute that frequency, transmute that vibration, so as not to fill the tub with fear, to fill the womb with fear? And that's, in very literal ways, that's why I think people are so contact about bellies, are also very anti-contact with other people in their bellies, or the reasons in which people talk to the belly or sing to the belly, and the ways in which that the cellular memory of that embryo, living thing, whatever stage it's in, also retains that information, also has information of its own, also has information from lineage, not to mention. So consider the frequencies that you output, consider the frequency of your fear, and how it is you would still that, how it is you would be a compassionate hand on the shoulder of that fear, so as to still it, so as to create a different vibration, because this is very much the state that we're in. Yes, Impulse around the corner. Yes, there's a full moon and Jupiter's right with the moon, so we're, and exactly that too. Jupiter is this, strange viscous material that's, absorbing all of this light and retaining it and programming with it, very much so. This is also just kind of par for the science of water, or hydrogen bonds in general. So again, it's not the bond, it is, or it's not what the thing is bonded to, it is the quality of the bond. And that is a reoccurring theme in a lot of this. Two of Cups in the Tower. Obviously, Tower moment. Go figure. Tower's inverted too. So though the world is crumbling on the outside, this is a moment to really understand what it is that we're trying to build from the inside out. Because that is your true stable point. If you know what it is that you want out of yourself, out of the world, out of a relationship, then you're going to be able to build them from a true and honest and trigness in your foundation. Trigness being the Indo-European root of truth, which connotates structure, which connotates strength in structure, resilience in structure, I suppose, but most the integrity of it, the integrity of that structure. And it's scary to find out we're operating on such feeble structures. We're watching so much blow itself out of the water, let us not be as transparent, as feeble as the structures that we are watching crumple. And realistically, let it, if it does crumple you too, because this is the way that you're also able to start from a new slate that's not based on, patriarchal ideals and roles and, understandings and connotations, and able to see past the not rose-colored lenses of the ways in which colonization has painted our views of the world and of ourselves utmost. When the tower falls, are you reaching out for something already new? When the tower falls, are you reaching out for anything else to hold on to? Is this a kicking and screaming, thrashing desperation? Or is this where you reach out closer to yourself rather than to something else? Or where you're willing to ask for help if you need it, in which case you're not just reaching out, you're opening yourself up. So it's less of a kicking and screaming and grappling onto, holding on to anything like we're drowning, and more of a signal for help, more of a, here I am, do you see me? I see me. The tower is really intense. It's a dark world, but it is quite a light inside. Again, I say, spirit is very alive. It's dogma that is dying. And the Two of Cups, also here, also inverted. It's so interesting. There's so much to this God. Because two is very literal. We can see the two dimensions, yada, yada, yada. Quite honestly, I think the two-dimensionality is maybe even a foundational of like simulatory reality. I've known some people that have similar visions of it, like a paper doll show, and there's not. It's an unsettling view for sure. It was an unsettling vision for sure. Comical though. So there is a very necessary quality to understanding either or the sides of polarity, to understanding the antipodes. This is also why we discuss where planets are what, but also where there is seemingly no planets but impactful energy nonetheless. Likewise with reading your own charts and what have you. People love to just like jump around to where they see stuff, and people are very forthcoming about like, well, I've got a stellium and this and this, and it's like, cool, dope, awesome. But also, what's the opposite of that? What's the antipode of that energy? Much like scholars will study, one party, but also like the anti-party, or how, a lot of people that are invested in really understanding the socio-political, geopolitical sphere will read that which they don't agree with, will read from the opposite side, will read from the opposition or the oppressor, is to better understand, to better identify the parameters with which you're working, or the language with which you're working with, or the language with which you're being assaulted by, so as to better understand your way through the situation, or understand weak points, or understand blind spots, so you can move through it, or create a new solution, or create some sort of tertiary option altogether, or navigate a new route out of said thing. If your entry and your exit are locked, we've got to find a window. And if your entry is colonialism, and your exit is fucking fascism, then we've got to find another way. We've got to find another way. There's many a window to choose from, should we be willing to look through it. And with this Two of Cups, yes, we understand the entry and the exit, but there's also a lot of water here too, and so it is not just the entry or the exit. It is not just the entry or the exit. It is not just left or right or wrong or any of what we think is the end-all be-all of any given left or right fork in the road. But it is very much about the hydrogen bonds in between, the flow in between, the relationship in between, the memory in between, and the ways in which that feeds story. Because the only reason that there's abundance here is because they're able to meet in the middle and almost shoulder to shoulder. That is collaboration rather than, what's the other thing people think they need to do? Compromise. Fuck compromise. Don't compromise for anybody. Collaborate with the right people, and you will never have to compromise your morals, your values, your sense of self. Especially not for a relationship. Or anything else, really. Because let's be honest, relationships the last thing on my mind. I ain't compromising for geopolitical sphere, that's for sure. There's blood in the trees. There's a lot of life here. So, like, these characters have their eyes closed, yes? So even in this relationship, it's not about the relationship, it's about the space that they take up in their relationship to everything around them. It's about the ways in which they interact with the world around them, and the life that is therein. Because even in this example, maybe it's just for this reading, I don't know, but they're less concerned about each other physically. They're more concerned about the flow of energy between them, and not just to each other, but to everything around them. So this is very much like a pure devotionary understanding, and a meeting of sorts, regardless of the multitude of characters, that is also very akin to your relationship with yourself, with your inner masculine tendencies and feminine tendencies or understandings. Perhaps even, the ways in which we still harbor any sort of misogyny or any sort of new age patriarchy with tits. And also why they meet at the shoulder. They bear the burden together rather than dump on the other or expect from the other or feel entitled from the other. So don't allow your logical brain to feel entitled to dominating over your emotional brain, or the capacity for brain-like computation in neurological cells that occurs in the heart and in the gut. In which case, silly that we rely so much on just that side of the brain, just the analytical side of the brain, not even the whole brain, just the analytical side of the brain, when we may have multiple. Realistically, we have multiple. It's not a brain, but it has similar fibers, or same fibers and same neurological material, and computes in a similar way, and perhaps is even substantiated to be in research preliminary information that is then sent. So let's get out of relying on third source of information input rather than preliminary or even more preliminary intuition. It's so much. I think we'll also do well to move from our heaviness, move with our heaviness into hopefulness. Not from, can't avoid it. Move with your heaviness into hopefulness in whatever ways, you need to fill your heart or to remind your heart that it is full. There's something so much lighter possible when we allow our hearts to do thinking for us, or to collaborate in the thinking process rather than be dominated by the logical brain. Those heavy, deep, obfuscating, terrifying blues, when fed to the heart, are able to create more like an emerald, more like a seafoam green, more like this hopeful turquoise, and even in that, expansive communication, expansive collaboration of communication, because that stone in and of itself is like such a reminder of the many elemental and earthen spirits that we can communicate with. And so in that, remember that you are not doing this alone, even if you refuse to ask for help. Perhaps you can deal with any shame in that by asking the ether, by asking the trees, by asking the water, by asking the air, by asking fallen feathers, by asking the birds, by asking from different perspectives, and more so than just what we deem to be conscious or human, because let's be real, a lot of the flesh and blood humans that we're around ain't that conscious. They may be awake, they may have their eyes open, but it does not necessarily mean aware. I would also, I feel like it's necessary to point out that both of these characters have cups, right? It is the Two of Cups. Both of these characters have cups. They both bring a cup to the thing. And so, in the event of, kicking and screaming, thrashing and drowning, yada, 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 and the fear in the belly, do we feel entitled to that offering? Do we feel like we're not bringing anything, or we have nothing to offer? Again, this kind of value thing, and self realization of value, or understanding of value. These characters both understand their inherent value, and they also are able to collaborate and both bring it to the table without expecting something from the other. So there's an ability to offer in devotion and without expecting anything, just to bring for the sake of everybody. For as much as this looks like a relationship, it continues to remind me more and more of the ways in which I show up for myself, and the ways in which you can show up for yourself, and the ways in which ancient tantric invocations, or intentions in meditation, are the ways in which we devote to ourselves, and that we open ourselves to truth and honesty and rawness and integrity, and not because we're manifesting like gimme, 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 more, more, but because we're intending to offer that growth and that openness and that eminence to everything that's around us, to everything that we touch. This is why meditation becomes a way of life. This is why meditation doesn't just exist in 20 minutes. This is why yoga doesn't stay on the mat, because it becomes an offering of love and devotion to just the peace in the world, to ease in the world. This is why monks are walking. And I think that's like the most heartfelt aspect of this card. It's not heartfelt relationship couple. It's very much the ways in which we're willing to show up and understand our value in showing up for ourselves and for the world. For ourselves and for any relationship that we have. Whether it be our dog that needs more walks, or our friend that needs more I love you texts, or our lover that, I don't know, needs something from you. Or the world that needs your hopefulness and that needs your spark to stay intact, so that we can continue to see ourselves clearly through dark times, and so that we can see ourselves clearly enough to stay integral and hopeful for that light at the end of the tunnel, but for illumination in dark times, for, much like a lighthouse illuminates the night for lost ships. You are that. You are that. For you, but also for anybody that you interact with. You are that for versions of you, many versions of you. The versions of you that have felt left behind, the versions of you that are waiting for you to arrive. And as soon as we're able to hold space for that, without feeling like we're going to fall off an edge, the more our world is able to expand, and the faster things are able to arrive for us and to meet us there, rather than for us to have to chase them down or to seek them out or to be so wanton and hungry for. So much of this is about satiation, despite all of the hunger occurring. It's understanding satiation in you. It's being satiated with the self, as in potent, as in juicy, as in nourishing, as in capable. So I like, there's so much in here. But I hope that all of that touches on something to be able to allow you to expand your awareness of yourself and be able to see yourself maybe in a new light that is more becoming, rather than something that's an old paradigm constricting and restricting you. Does that make sense? Okay. Lots of energy. And I think we'll do well to understand how to utilize these elements in our breath. So we'll move through a full cycle of harmonies in breathing, and attribute all elements and find our safe sound, which ultimately, one of my favorite things about this mode of breath work is that you can use it for anything, really. If you do this and you just need to sit and digest and rest and maybe read a book till you fall asleep, perfect. It sets you up for that kind of focus. If you need to finish this and go write a paper that you've been procrastinating on or what have you, then it also facilitates just enough energy and just enough focus for you to be able to thrive in that state as well. So it is very much an open and clear grounds, a cleansed circle for you to be able to move with your energy as you so choose. Choice. Lovely. In which case, each element has a breath. Though I love the craft, it is not earth, air, fire, water, with the energies that we want to move. And in conjuring, it will be fire, earth, air, water. Fire breath is in through your mouth, which you kind of like sip air, I suppose. You don't have to but in through your mouth, feeling the space in your chest and your shoulders open up, feeling the space behind your throat and in your throat to open up. And when you exhale through your nose, you'll feel that energy rise, perhaps even build a little bit heat. And you'll also feel the nerves in your eyes and the nerves in your brain have to really direct and focus that breath. So it requires focus of you, and focus in a blind spot, quite honestly, because there is a universal blind spot that occurs in the eyes because we can't see the bridge of the nose. We inhale through the mouth, we exhale through the nose. We do that 3 times. And then as that energy builds, we direct the breath in and out through the nose so as to not just build, we're not just building the ego, we're not just inflating the spiritual head, we are building energy that we can then ground and digest and integrate. So you inhale through the nose, clearing the central channel, feeling the space in your chest open up, and when you exhale through the nose, still having that focus in that direction, you, however, feel that energy that rose, that breath that rose behind the eyes, also grounds deeper into the body. Often I feel like it makes me feel more solid, like more palpable, more, like thick in presence. Maybe you feel it in your hips, maybe you feel it in your thighs, but ultimately you hold that breath deep in the basin of the hips in a way that is very nourishing. It is a very grounding breath. If you have been struggling to ground, it is not just touching grass. Perhaps you also incorporate this breath as you touch grass, or do other things to ground yourself in elemental ways. We do that 3 times. Fire, earth, air is very clearing internally and externally. A lot of this kind of breath work, especially with friends and what have you that I know that have a lot of anxiety, don't particularly like it, but don't particularly like excessive amounts of it because of hypoxia. However, it's only 3, and so I think it's a perfect amount to give you a slight sensation and full control, where you sip air into your mouth, feeling the space in the skull open up, because it very much exists like in the root of the skull and the very base of the skull. And when you exhale through the mouth, draw the tongue out so as to activate that root chakra, meet that energy in the middle. Draw the tongue out. And you feel that openness in your skull also open up and clear all the way around. You do that 3 times. And when you finish the air breath, you don't have to worry about feeling lightheaded because you direct the breath back into your nose to ground and release through your lips, through your mouth, in a water breath to clear, like a river, a smooth path, an irrigated path in your mind, in your body, and in your space of energy, so that you can create fertile grounds to do whatever it is that you need to do. All of those breaths, 3 times each, will bring us to a solid 12. However, because we work with 13 moon astrology, we'll round it out to a proper 13, in which case you can take your deep breath in and unleash whatever sound lies dormant in your body that needs to be let out. Maybe it's a groan, maybe it's a grunt, maybe it's a sigh, maybe it's a little bit of a scream. Fine. No judgment here. Let it out. You gotta. But if you don't know, or you're just not sure, or you want something more reliable, or you're really stressed and you don't want to scream, a trusty and reliable forever and ever is anti-inflammatory, is so many positive and beneficial things for the body, and has ample research to back it up in that. So when in doubt, you can always it is revolutionary. In which case, again, much like we breathe from the belly and we rise energy up, the ah is in the base of the hips, the ooh is in the chest and expansive outwardly into the shoulders, into the armpits, into all the lobes of the heart, before it ever rises up into the throat or into the mouth or into the pleasure center chakras, let alone outside of your crown. And the higher you go, you pour it out into the world in a positive way. So before I talk your ear off, we'll get some breathing done. Well, I guess after I talk your ear off, we'll get some breathing done. In which case, if you're ready, I'm ready. Take a deep breath in through your mouth. And exhale through your nose. Feeling that breath rise behind the eyes. Inhale through your mouth. And exhale through the nose. Perhaps feeling that heat build. Inhale through the mouth. And exhale through the nose. Feeling that direct focus. Now inhale through the nose. Feeling that central channel open. And exhale through the nose. Feeling that breath carried down into the chest, into the belly, into the thighs, into the hips. Inhale through the nose. And exhale through the nose. Inhale through the nose. And exhale through the nose. Feeling more palpable, feeling more embodied. Inhale through the mouth. Clearing that skull and draw the tongue out. Exhale. Sweeping that air all around. Inhale through the mouth. And exhale, draw the tongue out. And you can feel that diaphragm lift, yeah? Inhale through the mouth. And draw the tongue out, exhale. Inhale through the nose. Grounding in that open space in the skull. And slowly, gently exhale through the mouth. Inhale through the nose. Reveling in the open space behind the eyes. And gently, patiently exhaling through the mouth. Drawing out that exhale for as long as you can. Inhale through the nose. And exhale for the longest exhale you can muster. Patiently, gently, calmly. Acknowledging the clearness in your head and your heart and your chest. And also the clearness in the space around you as you emanate. And take a deep breath in. And on your exhale, let out whatever sound or sigh you need. And I will do my I hope that is just one more way in which you can feed some compassion and some trust to your spirit and your psyche rather than give in to any fear. May you hold yourself gently and with great devotion to your integrity. Wata, atanata. Shiriya shirikoya. Pantakoi. I thank you from my heart. I appreciate you for being here and for your presence, because in a world hell-bent on obfuscation and distraction and illusion and dismissal, Your presence is a valuable tool and a weapon against all of the weapons against us. So continue to use your presence to the best of your ability against these heavy waves and walls of time and pressure. And may it continue to lead you in clarity toward yourself and toward exactly where you want to be. Much love, my friends. I appreciate you. Thank you for being here. Welcome if you're new. And stick around because there's so much to learn about ourselves and the world and the ways in which we can magically intervene and ancestrally convene and collaborate in this time in the future, and with great honor to the past and all of its efforts. Party on. Love you. And take really good care of yourself. Like I said, hold yourself gently and compassionately, especially when there's fear abounding. Party on.